All right, let's talk about budgets. Now, I know usually the word budgeting sounds like a boring administrative chore, or worse, a tool used by states and bosses just to control us, right? But today's explainer looks at a text called Participatory Budgeting in the Commune, and it completely reframes the whole concept. It shows how we can take budgeting and turn it into a direct, horizontal tool for collective power and mutual aid. It literally overturns the traditional logic of resource management, proving that budgeting can actually be a living, breathing practice of direct democracy. Let's dive in and see exactly how a commune manages its resources horizontally. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start by defining participatory budgeting and its 5 core benefits. Then, we'll look at how it scales from local neighborhood needs up to the municipal level. Finally, we'll break down the 4 steps of voting and see how this all becomes a living practice of autonomy. Section 1. What is participatory budgeting? A democratic approach to resources. So the source draws a really stark contrast right out of the gate. In a capitalist or state system, budgets are basically hoarded by politicians. They're negotiated behind closed doors and then presented to us as a done deal. Ordinary folks have zero voice in it. But in the commune, that dynamic completely flips. Resources are managed horizontally. Budgets are openly contested, and ultimately, they're decided on by the very people doing the work and living in the community. It's a massive shift from elite control to actual collective decision-making. And that brings us to the formal definition the text provides. Participatory budgeting, or PB, is a directly democratic process through which community members decide how to allocate part or all of a public budget. To put that into perspective, this simply means you, your affinity group, or maybe your housing block, sitting down in an assembly and deciding exactly how to use your shared mutual aid funds. It yanks the power right out of the hands of administrators and puts it firmly into the hands of the community. Section 2. 5 benefits of shared power. Why PD matters. The source highlights 5 massive benefits that really prove how effective horizontal organization is in practice. First, transparency. Because all spending is open, there's no hoarding or misuse of funds. Second, autonomy, meaning real decision-making power stays with local councils. Third, collective ownership. When you see your own ideas actually turn into real projects, it drastically deepens community solidarity. Fourth is relevance, which just means ensuring our funds go to actual local desires rather than being imposed top-down. And finally, education. The text points out that this process demystifies logistics. It's basically skill sharing, where everyone learns exactly what it takes to fund and sustain our mutual aid projects together. Section 3. Neighborhood budgets. Local needs. Power at the grassroots. Now, the absolute core of this is that budgeting starts locally. Every single neighborhood council gets a defined portion of the budget specifically for small-scale, everyday needs. The text gives some really tangible examples of this immediate mutual aid, like fixing the roof of a collective living space, setting up a neighborhood tool library, or keeping a community food pantry stocked. It's all about direct action that improves everyday life, right where you live. And this brings us to a crucial rule of the neighborhood budget. 100% of that defined local budget belongs solely to the neighborhood council. The text is super clear about this. This local fund absolutely cannot be touched or swallowed up by the larger municipal assembly. No way. This strict boundary is absolutely vital because it safeguards local autonomy, making sure grassroots priorities are never sidelined by bigger centralized issues. Section 4. Municipal budgets, collective institutions, scaling up our needs. Okay, so while the neighborhood is handling the food pantries and local repairs, the commune obviously has larger needs too. This is where the whole commune participates together. The text explains that this municipal budget supports large-scale collective institutions. We're talking about funding big infrastructure here, like cooperatives, community canteens, credit unions, and even commune-wide energy systems. It ensures everyone gets a direct say in how the larger network is built and maintained, totally independent of the state. Section 5. The 4 steps of voting, turning ideas into action. So how does a commune actually agree on funding a massive project without it turning into a bureaucratic nightmare? The source outlines a really smooth, decentralized 4-step method. Step 1 happens months in advance using commune app polls. Members propose and vote on priorities through a transparent digital platform just to get early ideas on the table. Step 2 moves offline into face-to-face assembly discussions, where those digital proposals get heavily debated and refined. Step 3 is moderated deliberation. The text notes that moderators are crucial here to balance discussions, make sure marginalized voices are actually centered, and stop informal hierarchies from creeping in. And finally, step 4 is final voting, where all members vote directly on the options to ensure total clarity and consensus.
Section 6. A living practice of autonomy. More than bureaucracy.
This source really brings it all home with this quote. Participatory budgeting is both practical and symbolic. It's incredibly practical because resources literally flow directly to where people want and need them, whether that's a local food pantry or a massive cooperative. But it's also deeply symbolic. It physically proves that resources belong to the community as a whole, not to some distant administrators. By baking direct democracy into everything from the hyperlocal block up to the entire municipality, the commune builds an economy based on mutual trust instead of top-down authority. It takes budgeting from an opaque state ritual and turns it into the lifeblood of horizontal organization. So, now that we've seen how this transparent system works, I'll leave you with this. What mutual aid project would you bring to your next General Assembly? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this sparks some exciting ideas for your own communities.